played RPGs for a very long time, since some of my earliest memories. One of my very first, and that inspired me so thoroughly, before I even knew things like tabletop role-playing games and the like, was Geneforge. For those of you who might remember playing on Windows Vista, Wild Tangent Games, there was the Geneforge series by Spiderweb Software. Delightful game, very classic in its stylings, very old school. And let me tell you, it's a game series worth checking out. If you have any interest in old school RPGs at all, the story approaches from a very unusual perspective. But I'm not playing Geneforge right now, I'm playing Roadwarden. The reason I bring that up is because I've had a long time with them, and I realized I hadn't played on the channel at all, so I think that this will be a good foot placed in that direction. I don't care how it feels, but I need it to be strong if I want to travel, and I can't afford another one. Well, not that much of a dickhead. I think I'll go with the first. Take a moment to admire that sound work. Between the soundtrack itself, which thankfully loops very well, and the regular sounds of nature, it immediately pulls me in as the player at least. From time to time, your routine helps you avoid mistakes, but this doesn't make it any more exciting. Ah yes, the mistakes. Those are excitement you don't want. Well, let's see here. Ooh, interesting. We're right at the rear of the day. That reminds me, since I suppose I can't help but reference other games than the one I'm playing, this reminisces of the Digimon World clock that they had up in the corner. Something that is pictographic rather than strictly numeric gives a lot more of a grounding feeling to the overall presentation, especially with this more simple pixel art style, although it definitely has its depth to it compared to a lot of the more high contrast variants that you'll see out there. Delivers a truly earthy feel to it. I wouldn't pick it, but I like the fact that you can be an asshole. You can cut right to the point. You can be all business, all by the book, and have absolutely no consideration for anything but the work. I guarantee, especially with the heaviness of the setting as it is presented so far, that will appeal to a good number of folks. And look at that. Anybody who's familiar with role-playing games in general knows that line of sight is something that is often underserviced. And in the very presentation of the pixel art itself for the environment, so very akin to the old-school choose-your-own-adventure storybooks, where you would open it and look to take a path and it would tell you which page to flip through, it has that same delivery of an environment that slowly creeps into perspective and view as you come into it. Not very differently from the kind of fog of war that you experience on a completely black map, and yet it's assuming an entirely different form for how it shows itself. Fantastic adaptation. I eat quickly, not focusing on the taste. Didn't speak with Talia. Hey man, that sounds like a good meal, I'll be honest. Especially with the blueberries, I'd be happy. A bit in presentation, whether you are writing it or vocalizing it, that I've always found grand admiration for, is weaving in the details into your descriptions of relation. Indexing one thing that you might otherwise have laborious to describe in its own right, unto itself, by itself, with another, as was just done here. Describing the details of this individual, their gambeson, their demeanor, their disposition, in comparison with your own, that is masterful. I think I'll also roll a dice for this. A die for this, I should say. And we will say, I'll roll a 1d10, and we'll see where that lies. If it's a 1 through 5, and the commensurate 6 through 10. Alright, that is a double-double 0-0. We will then go with the last option. I'll be a blasphemous atheist. How befitting. And Tulia, by the way. She reaches out her hand. Another subtle detail, not simply giving the name of the character to the player, but allowing them to introduce themselves. Instead of just allowing the players some meta-knowledge, further immersing them into the moment, into the mood of a insinuation of a character in the realm. In such small ways, goes a long way. Jumping like that to save a man in the middle of an attack doesn't sound like a wise decision. Well, I praised them for it earlier, you know, the option is there. In case you really don't like Tullia. Or the companion. Demoralize the hell out of them, I guess you could. Your palfrey needs you to survive. Without it, you too would be lost. Inserting a good relation between the steed and the rider. Something you also don't see very much of. Especially in games, the protagonist, if you are one such, usually rather uses all manner as, well, disposable, especially if it comes into the age of technology and it's something of a vehicle rather than a living creature. And now, surely, I'm not the only one who reflects upon old games of yore like Oregon Trail, or even some of the reduxes like Oregon Trail that had a bit of a limelight for a time, and sees something like this screen, and it just brings a smile to your face. Unlike some, I actually really like travel in RPGs, be they tabletop or video game. You own a few valuable possessions essential for your trade. Ooh, boy, oh boy, oh boy, I get to choose my class. So for those who are tuning in, I have rather a disposition towards wizards and sorcerers and all of that kind of thing, if you can't tell. I like the separation amidst the pure brawliness of the fighter, distinct magical orientation of the mage, and chemic background of the scholar. It's a very interesting partition, and I've always liked the idea of keeping the raw woo-woo apart from the I sit and read books. Now look at my horse. What's its name? Definitely not Sodal. I know that there is egg in here, almost certainly, and I do not know who the second is. Decide between yourselves, whoever claims it first. Whoever says first here, I will name the horse after them. My trustiest steed, guiding me through the deepest of dark forests and illest of sepulchrous depths. I will go with Egg, as they are the first individual. Egg is peaceful as you stroke its mane. Maybe it can't help you choose a path, but you've spent many years together. Happy to go on. It takes a couple of steps forward. Options, options, options. Well, I do like woo-woo, but I also really like lore, if you can't tell. Oh, man. The fighter is neat. I like the fighter. I like that they actually use an axe, one of the more technic weapons that are available across all three classes, but especially to be put into the fore with the fighter. And the recognition of, hey, you know, maybe it's not all just chainmail and plate out here, but actually using the appropriate terminology and considering the kinds of costs that come about with what is evidently a low magic setting, at least on the face of it, of gambeson cloth armor for those who are not a big HEMA, historical European martial arts fan, as I am, and just a Militaria fan in general. That is some good mindfulness towards the world building that you're lying forth. Oh, interesting. The city artisans make coins by cutting dragon bones into slices. They are valued by merchants, though rarely used in the countryside. I'm taking a long time to get through this intro, but I'm really just impressed by everything. The fact that they have even accounted for the currency being something that is valuable by nature, not valuable de jure. It puts into the hands of the player and all of the non-player characters something that not simply arbitrarily has some intrigue, at least some history, some part in the greater world. But I guarantee, if they're dragon bones, they'll also have some uses in things like alchemy, or perhaps even magery. Nonetheless, an object of economy that puts real, tangible value into one's hands instead of simply fiat in the ye olde days, that's good. Gambeson. Ooh, they even give us some more details about its construction. A padded defensive jacket made of linen filled with rags. It's the cheapest type of armor, yet surprisingly effective, and as a result, very common. There you go, like I was saying earlier, pointing out its affordability and therefore its availability to the common individual. And that is specifically filled with rags, rather than something that is quilted or custom made or otherwise has some tailoring and work done unto it as a definitive product. I cannot praise that high enough. The travel set. Not just any travel set, the travel set. I'm glad that we have the one and only. And that's a nice mix. A knife, what looks to be a bowl, and a candle. A candle doesn't get looked at very much, but if you've taken a look at, for instance, what's in a Dungeons & Dragons starting pack, it often falls to the wayside. The infinite value of such small trivialities, how they can be applied in even the most versatile of situations as combat, or intrigue, or espionage, or some manner of infiltration. Having a candle can allow you to do a number of things, and I'm curious to see how this game employs it. Like being able to oil various garments for repair or maintenance, or if you are in a place where there is something like a door, oiling the hinges, or even using it to cut a mold for keys and the like. There's a lot you can do with wax, and that isn't just lighting. Don't take it the wrong way, Kairos, but are you a devout soul? Religion, always an interesting part of any story. Let's see what we've got here. It might seem like the regular sort of quadrant with the unaligned option of most sorts of settings. But in a circumstance so stark and dire as this, where there are vast and untampered wildernesses full of genuine monsters, it makes a great deal of sense to have what is, in essence, is a unitary body and axiomatic following. Something that is esoteric and something that is occult, followed by the option of standing apart, unalignment, putting oneself to the side, and declaring all of these orthodoxies as simply what they are. Fascinating. If he's alive, I don't think he's gonna be happy about me taking away all of his possessions. That's fair. But also, a phenomenal way to hook the player into taking on a mission that not only detracts from their primary line of quest, but also is probably going to be quite dangerous if a previous Roadwarden, which was wealthy, established as he has kids, and is willing to go on and about all sorts of more deleterious tasks, is in dire trouble, means that you'll definitely be going with. And in that, not only hooking the emotions by telling the children, hey, Dad's not coming back, I'm sorry. And, hey, here's some inventory stuff that you could really use that will help you a long way. Very well done indeed. Now, if only I could get that Saurian too. Need to confirm a note, you're editing to save it. Oh! It's one of those types of games. A game where notes are valid and important, where they aren't simply something that you might take down if you're, trying to metagame, but it's built into the game. You're anticipated to do so. And as a scholar, it fits very well. Now, for the other classes of the mage and the fighter, presumably, you would at least be somewhat literate, and if not, you would have some strong mnemonic devices, especially if you're working as the mage. But having it here, integrating it properly, in what is pointing towards something that will require some careful consideration of your various activities and actions, that's wily. It's nice to see that there is something of an index for all of the stuff that we're going to be seeing throughout here, along with some unique names for the various fantastic species we might be encountering. Something that's always bothered me in a lot of tabletop role-playing games is that there's not enough foreknowledge that's available to the player to make informed decisions insofar as where and what they do. And having something, not a packet, but having a little compendium that is available for bite-sized bits of information, it would go a long way, and I think it's something that ought to be included in most session zeros. This is a fine example thereof, giving you a broad sweep of the entire setting that you're dealing with, in addition to, of course, what you are encountering as your character. Of all of the bits in the narrative thus far, this paints the picture of their situation as outpost soldiery extraordinarily well. They are in the middle of nowhere. They are, as far as I can tell, without much of any kind of supply, and they have positively nothing that is giving them any sign of hope, and yet they continue to press on out of a sense of duty or obligation, maybe a little bit of both. Some repayment, at least, for their doing their work, keeping up with everything that they've been charged with. Stay tidy to have a better chance to influence others. Appearance, 2 of 5. You don't stand out from the crowd. You won't get much cleaner without a proper bath. Big ups for having something that actually takes account of one's demeanor, their appearance, being directly noted as a feature that modifies one's interactions with others. That's a fantastic way of splitting the difference between how you come across and what choices you make for your dialogue. In a fixed branching pathway system, like a text-based RPG, that's absolutely crucial if you want to give an opportunity to your players to have something of a genuine option about their outcomes, roles, positions that they have attained through hard work or reputation, as it comes across in appearance. I look for a place protected from wind. I use my bag as a pillow, my blanket on the ground, and cover myself. That's some good soldiery there. Something that used to be a common set of skills, learning how to use your equipment for more than, well, simply its immediate intentions or provisions of utility, but also as something that is handy in the actual activities of living, and living rough. Offering the player the opportunity to set themselves a long-term vision on top of the background that they're established with in the fashion of a small selection, if there is something that must be set to rigors, as in perhaps something like a module or tabletop role-playing games, a plot line that a written character might follow, or, of course, in the form of a video game that might be selected by the individual for their own ends, is a fascinating way to offer anybody and everybody the sense of choice, even if it is something that is fixed and completely linear, like a movie or written piece, even if it is fixed in branching pathways, as in a video game that follows as this one does. It permits identification not only with the character, but also with the setting. The statement of Randolph Carter. What can't be said in the high praises of Lovecraft? The most fantastic, literally. A writer of the ages is he. Even these things which were published in amateur pulp magazines were some of the most scintillant writers of horror, science fiction, and really some of the base ideas of all short story novella and even greater had got their starts. They laid the foundations for those which every other, to include myself, now follow in the paths of, in that specific Lovecraftian way. The directness, as if writing a genuine account, usually from the perspective of one who has survived an encounter with these crossings between the world of spirit and the world of corporeality as we know it. Short, sweet, to the point, and yet with just enough diversity about it that it grants texture, the verbiage, multifarious, the poetic illustrations that come from the synthesis thereof. Breathtaking. While there is a lot of piling on to the glory of Lovecraft out of, I believe at this point, tradition, as I am doing here, to rekindle some of that appreciation for it in a more direct manner than simple proxy, as we have seen in the many derivations or descendants of Lovecraft's kind of work, or by simple hearsay, there is untold depiction, analysis, anatomization of the thing that can be taken in whole or in part, as a set or as its elements, and constructed in one own style, as we all do, as we all must, and such is the statement of Randolph Carter. Burning the dead is not just a religious practice, it's a necessity. Soldiers, priests, village mayors, even road wardens, making a large pyre takes a lot of time, but it saves lives. Thalia calls this undead a she. Most Unites hesitate to do so. Finally, for the first time that I've seen expressly, a setting takes the undead threat seriously. Far too often, I have seen in all manner of settings, that there is such a thing as the undead, and that the undead are not some mere freak happenstance that transpires out of the blue. Maybe someone performs some ill magic in the midst of nowhere, where it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of willpower and expertise, but just ambiently, and that they continue to go stronger time over time, whether by feeding or some other mechanism. Finally, a setting that takes it seriously and, as you would expect, puts that into a proper faith. Mix black powder with gladden that grows nearby, the dried skunk sorrel from my bag. Once I ignite it and throw it at the griffins, they'll scatter. brilliant use of alchemy, where almost all skills in many games tend to be focused on combat. The applications of it outside in the various ways available to one, much as I was pointing out about the candle in the inventory that comes with your provisions. There is a plenty opportunity afoot, if you think about it just a little, player, writer, or game master. Another element that is worthy of notation from the devs is that they actually have the buildings whitewashed and the roofs thatched, as it was done to protect the stonework underneath and prevent any kind of destruction thereabouts. Not to mention that it isn't pristine in some sort of fantastic condition. Shows that even someplace as passing as this inn is given the proper attention and consideration for its place in the realm. It has been said throughout the course of various lines of text that we have not only the pneuma, but the shell. We regard the physique, as it might be called in the Panatrivium, that the dialect has even a place in the text options that we have at our disposal. Shows not only a certain commitment to the lore and world that is being laid out, but also to the linguistic affections, which are different from our very own in real life. Between the two of them, the statement of Randolph Carter and the Unnameable gives us a first step into the whole theme and conception of an ethereal realm where there is a lasting impression of the soul, or something approximating that for things less human. And within that, some idea of the world that he is lying forth, not so dissimilar to Roadwarden, which in its own way establishes a real living surface for us to invest ourselves into, not only as a character, but also as a participant, much in the same way as these books allow us to take the perspective of, in the first, a reader of Carter's account, and in the second, a fly on the wall, catching all of the minute details of another experience and experiment with things beyond the veil. If you have enjoyed, I would hope that you take a look at giving our channel the opportunity to spread by telling others about it, letting them know, participating perhaps even yourself. We have X or Twitter, depending on which you prefer, Instagram, Discord, an entire server of our own, Spotify, and of course, BitChute, TikTok, and perhaps even more to come. If you like that content enough that you might wish to support me, there's always Patreon. If you want to do something subscriptive, or Stream Elements, which is linked down in the description if you are inclined. Stream Elements is one time, and it can be for any amount that you desire, although there are pre-filled amounts. The Patreon has the tiers of $5, $10, and $20. The easiest one to get into, that gives you something back, of course. Each one of these is the proponent tier of $5. Therein you'll have lovely things like the ability to vote in any upcoming polls, which I might put forth, access to your own little spot in the Discord server for Patreons only, alongside the ability to watch all of this content ad-free and at your own leisure, and to download it for offline use. Besides that, I thank you all for your time. It has been a phenomenal one, and I bid that you all never miss your opportunities.